Power Athlete Nation, summer is weeks away and you got to get that body right. Now, whether it's to pack on a little bit of muscle to fill out those pants and fill out that t-shirt, or to lean out and show off those abs by popping off that shirt, we got you covered. Now, the reason we like to start busting our ass now is so that we have a little bit of margin of error so that you can cut loose and not feel guilty. So what I want you to do is go check out one of Power Athlete's nutrition protocols. We got a leaning, we got a bulking, we got a keto, and we also have a performance protocol for those of you that need a little bit of extra attention and really trying to dial it in so that you look like $1 million come summer.
To learn more, head to powerathletehq.com/nutrition to find out which protocol is right for you. And we're going to give you an extra 20% off at checkout with the code EATTHEWEEK.
20%?
Yeah, that's all caps. EATTHEWEAK at checkout.
Dude, it sounds good to me. Now you got your mission. You know what we're expecting. Go get it. See ya. Hey, Power Athletes. We have a special edition of Power Athlete Radio discussing all things Grindstone. When your nose is to the grindstone, this is the podcast. I'm CEO of Power Athlete John Wilburn, and I'm joined by Mr. Chris McQuilkin, a.k.a. Tex, Director of Training for Power Athlete.
Howdy. Yes, and we're getting into Grindstone program.
What is Grindstone, Chris?
Well, it is this choose your own adventure program. There's a time in everyone's life when they want to train hard, but then work, kids, new responsibilities just start to get in the way.
Man, I hate that. Have I told you how much I hate that?
No.
That Grindstone's kind of the save.
Oh my God.
It irks me because Grindstone is probably the best program in terms of like well-balanced, well thought out, kind of just hitting a little bit of everything, allowing you to have the complete package. Whereas, you got Grindstone, big hypertrophy, big thick slabs of muscle, Jack Street with big slabs of muscle, athleticism, fostering, developing athleticism with Field Strong. Grindstone's kind of a blend of everything. Gives you a little bit of Jack Street, gives you a little bit of Field Strong, gives you a little bit of Johnny Watt, Johnny Bod. It gives you a mix and shouldn't be a safe because it's some of the most, dude, we're spitting fire daily on it.
Yes, a very flexible training program is what I was getting at.
I like flexible.
Flex-able, as we call it. So
like flexible like a gymnast?
Yes.
Okay.
What we're doing today is going to be providing 8 tools to help you sharpen your axe on Grindstone.
Was that a pun?
I don't know. It's more of like a picture.
Okay. So let's get into them. So we got 8 tips to help you maximize your experience on Grindstone, one of Power Athlete's flagship training programs. And if you want to check it out, you can go to powerathletehq.com/training. Scroll down, click down. You'll see Grindstone. Click on it. And if you want to give a free trial, click through to our trusted partner, Train Heroic. Sign up and get 7 days free and see how you get your hair set on fire.
Yeah, before we get to the tips, John, explain the experience because all the training, it appears, is stacked on one day.
Yeah.
But then each week that it drops on Fridays, you get the opportunity to align your
Sometimes
training
Saturdays.
Hey, TC, step your game up, but align your training with your week schedule. So talk about that experience of being on the program.
Yeah, it's a flexible training program. So what we ask people to do is your first training day of the week ideally should be mandatory lower. Your second training day of the week, now this might be a Wednesday, might be a Thursday, it might be a Monday, however it fits, should be mandatory upper. Now, with that said, you might have a deal where you don't have any training time until way later in the week, and you might only have some short days during the week to kind of backfill your training. So we have optional days available to you, but the entire training week is loaded on Monday. And it's up to you to kind of drag and drop, think Minority Report, and put the training for your week, and it allows for a flexible training program.
All right. So there you have it. So we have 2 mandatory days, 1 upper, 1 lower, and then 4 optional days for you get to pick, and they target different.
It's actually 5, it'll be 3 optional days because there's 2 rest days. What happened was when I started offering 6 training days, people started freaking out a little bit, and I realized that sometimes that was a little much. So I backed it down to 5 training days. So you have 2 mandatory and then 3 optional. One's going to be a big aerobic capacity day, looking to build that aerobic base. One's going to be another strength day. And then there's really just a mix of some glycolytic conditioning and just some short accessory work.
Sweet. So there you have it. Mix and match. Be flex-able. So the first tip that we have for sharpening your axe on Grindstone, this is a classic.
Move the dirt. So
classic Wellbornism.
Well, a long time ago, there was this guy on this podcast. So actually,
not this podcast.
No, not this podcast.
A podcast.
I think it was the first podcast I ever did was the Barbell Shrug podcast. And I gave...
The BS podcast?
Yeah, big BSers. I don't even know if those guys podcast anymore. I know one of them passed away. I don't even know. I think the other guy got freeze dried and it's out, in the middle of the Amazon doing ayahuasca trips. And I don't even know what happened to those guys. Is there still a Barbell Shrugged out there?
Well, we're here. That's what's important. So continue. Move the dirt.
Yeah. So I gave an analogy towards training, and it was something that allowed me to wrap my head around the daily matrix of training. Because not every day you get to, like kick the door in off the hinges and tear it down. And there were some days that just felt like a little bit of survival. So the analogy was, training's a lot like moving dirt. Some days you get a shovel, some days you get a spoon, but as long as you're moving dirt every day, you're headed towards your goal. So the move the dirt has been a mantra on Grindstone where not every day is going to feel 100%. Not every day is going to be your best training day. And you can't look at it in the micro. You can't say, today was sucked, so therefore everything's garbage. You have to look at the training as like an entire cycle. And as long as you have more, big shovel days than you do spoon days, we should be able to make progress. But that's not realistic in life. You're going to have things like friends, family, job, work. You're going to have disasters, injuries. I mean, everything that life can throw at you, it does. And what we wanted to do is create a flexible training program that allowed you to continue to drive adaptation, even in the face of all of this kind of disarray.
Yes. So some days you get that shovel, and when you do got it in your hands, go.
And over my shoulder, you can spot it. There's a shovel and a spoon.
An engraved spoon.
Engraved spoon.
That little guy?
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about that little guy.
I think the engraving says nobody ever died from being too awesome. Well, that might be a different spoon.
That's Johnny Wad. That's a whole different podcast.
I like it. All right, so it's number 1, move the dirt. Number 2, training day selection. As you get into this, you have to select. Ideally, I would love for your first 2 training days to be mandatory upper or lower and upper, but that might not be advantageous. Like for you, and you're like, hey, I know I get Saturday and Sunday off. That's when I have the most time and my best chance to really slay those workouts. Throw those on Saturday and Sunday. And then I want you to backfill with those other 3 training days during the week. I really want you to not miss those aerobic capacity days and really focus on building that aerobic base. The strength is always going to be a real mix. There's going to be some heavier stuff, but there's also going to be some speed, a lot of unilateral, some classic bodybuilding stuff that we've pulled from Jack Street is going to be on that day. And then I give you a little Johnny Wad with a little bit of glycolytic capacity like you'd find within the CrossFit football realm. We'll pop in there too.
Sweet. Heavy, hard, and fast.
So how you arrange your training, I want you to have a little bit of foresight for the week. I don't want you to do all ad hoc and, jump in there and be like, hey, I'm going to burn it down Monday, but then I'm not going to be able to train for 4 days in this. I want you to understand your training week, and I want you to plan it accordingly and give yourself the opportunity to be successful.
All right. Moving next one is going to be compensatory acceleration. So before getting into the purpose, John, simply what is compensatory acceleration?
Compensatory acceleration is defined as mechanical advantage increases, so does bar speed. So I want you to think about on a bench press, as you're bringing the bar down, the weakest point on the bench press or on any movement is going to be at the bottom. As you continue to drive up the bar as mechanical advantage, which means as I get closer to lockout, I will get stronger. So what happens a lot of time is people are fast off the chest and then they slow down. I want you to think the opposite. I'm fast off the chest, and as mechanical advantage increases, so does speed. And I want you to work on accelerating the bar once you get past that sticking point. And what happens when you start using compensatory acceleration and you start moving the weights fast and violent, we start, activating, to quote Fred Hatfield, white muscle fibers, but it's actually max motor unit recruitment. So we start recruiting more muscle, more motor units, and we teach the body how to move fast. And there's a direct correlation between increased compensatory acceleration and strength and speed.
Yes, and coordination goes a long way, especially long term. Our aim, performance for the people, we want people training for a long time. So we're providing quality training. But the more dialed in their primal movements, their proficiency, their coordination, also the more it carries over to the fun stuff that they get to do in life. Well,
as we age, 2 things happen. We start losing motor unit recruitment, and we start losing mitochondrial density. So mitochondria is how we get energy through the cells. So To increase mitochondrial density, we need a large aerobic base. That's where that aerobic base training comes in and becomes so paramount in this training. Oh, and little note, if you're following Grindstone and you want to repeat a day, like for example, you might not have a ton of time to do some of the other stuff, but you want to give yourself maybe 2 aerobic days or even 3 aerobic days, you can always double up on those aerobic days. There's no, I guess you could say, like, there's no diminishing returns by doubling or tripling those up. Whereas I wouldn't necessarily recommend, multiple
3 watts,
or 3 mandatory lowers in a week. Do the mandatory upper, do the mandatory lower, hit the strength, hit this, and if you got some more time, you can always backfill with more aerobic work.
Yes.
But a few things happen. We lose mitochondrial density. Increase in mitochondrial density come from a large aerobic base, and then we start losing the ability to recruit motor units and recruit muscle fibers. Compensatory acceleration utilizes that and helps us fight that off. So it becomes, those 2 principles become paramount in anti-aging in terms of like, I'm not talking about like some weird clinic you go to, but in terms of like fighting off old age, maintaining muscle mass, and continue to be strong and proficient into your 30s and 40s. This becomes one of the foundations for it.
Yeah. So compensatory acceleration, and each week during the barbell action, and paired with it, there's a targeted day for the aerobic work for the mitochondria density. How else is aerobic work important for building muscle now? So not just the density of these small mitochondria, but also the muscles that we can see.
The aerobic base it kind of has an interesting downstream effect in that, the aerobic work is really good in terms of cardiovascular and building the heart and making sure that the body's pumping blood and moving through. But also we know that people that do a strength training program, especially if they eat in caloric restriction with a high protein diet, and then they use some aerobic work to kind of create a little bit of a caloric deficit, will end up carrying more muscle and less fat than people that don't. And when all of a sudden we start carrying a higher amount of muscle in relation to fat, now we start talking about metabolic flexibility. And now we start just getting people stronger, making people more metabolically flexible, healthier, and just more jacked.
Yeah, one note I've heard you say recently, like, why are all these people worried about losing body fat? Why not just building muscle?
Yeah, this is a weird one. Periodically, and I know Charles probably does the same thing because I know I send him a lot of weird shit on Instagram. But like I kind of get stuck in the wormhole, especially at night. Like I'll go down and George Bryant, one of the guys I went on the motorcycle ride, who's become like a good friend of mine recently. Super interesting cat. Hooked me up with these guys called Harpy, and Harby, I think is what it is. And it's actually a necklace thing I was telling you about that does PMF.
I've seen you wear it on your head.
Yeah, well, I got a bigger one now. I can wear it around my neck. But it's this device, and it's as I got on with the guy, what it does is it provides vibration, and they think that it can mimic different effects. And so, they have a calming one, they have like a nighttime one. And so what I'll do is they have one that's like kind of an hour before you're supposed to go to sleep. You're supposed to have like an unwind period. So I'll put on my blue blocker, blocking light glasses that I wear when I'm on the computer. And I'll just kind of go lay in there and turn on the chili pad and relax a little bit, turn the fan on, and I'll kind of get stuck in the wormhole. And what I'm looking for is kind of like trends. And one of the trends that's become universal now is everybody's so obsessed with this idea of fat loss. We got to lose fat. America's obese. This is fat, and it's whether it be fit teas or this, everything's about fat loss. And I had this weird epiphany where it just looks, and actually what it came down to was, seeing a bunch of before and after pics from people doing different contests. Like, we were doing the, Hammer 90. And as I was going through and looking at like, Ryan Fisher and, Mike Rashid and some of the, Jen Wiederstrom and some other people do these contests. And I was kind of looking at their before and afters. And some of the people, when they stripped away the fat, just didn't have enough muscle to make it look good. And I came to the conclusion that instead of fighting everybody to lose fat, what if we just fight to get people to put on more muscle? Because at the end of the day, body fat's just a percentage in relationship to total body weight and muscle. It's amazing where if somebody came in, they'd look better if they lost 5 or 10 pounds of fat, but they'd also look dramatically way more badass if we put on 5 or 10 pounds of muscle. So there's more than one way to like drop your body fat. Either put on more muscle or you just lose fat. And there's nothing to say we can't do both at the same time. But I really think that the majority of the world would be better off if they just put on more muscle, or they were fighting to maintain and gain muscle more so than focused on just being a fucking skinny fat ball of chewed bubble gum.
There's a tagline in there somewhere. Next up, more pull-ups.
Yep. Now, I was never able to quantify this, and Greg Glassman, for all of his neuroses and whatever, made some really amazing observations. And he did. He said athletes that are able to do more pull-ups are fitter and stronger than athletes that can't. We saw this in the military.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
The U.S. Army could have just erased the entire ACFT if they had just required pull-ups. And that's what our throwout was. It's hard to do pull-ups with a fat ass. And Greg's deal was when people got more pull-ups, they got more confidence, they got stronger, and everything got better. So I might not program a high amount of pull-ups every single day within Grindstone, but that doesn't mean that you are limited to what I program. I think, and I do this at least 3 to 4 days a week. I'll periodically, if I'm doing any aerobic work, if I'm doing anything, I'll just stop and just do a max set of push-ups. I do it in the shop at least once a day. I'll be like, all right, my goal is to do 50 unbroken or 75 unbroken. Remember Rudy Reyes is like, I was terribly out of shape. I could only do 75 unbroken pull or push-ups. I'm like, oh, Jesus. So that's a pretty good indicator of health. People that can do over 50, and I'd have to pull the numbers, but there's a correlation with like heart attacks and fitness with how many push-ups you can do cold. If you can lay down and do over 50, you got like, like your chance of dying of a heart attack is dramatically less than somebody that can do 5. So, with the pull-up stuff, if you walk in the gym, I would, every time I walked into the gym, if I'm warming up and doing different stuff, let's say I jump on the assault bike, I want to do a little bit of lacrosse, a little bit of mobility, a little myofascial release, relax the nervous system, jump up and do a max set of pull-ups, see how many you can get periodically, just kind of throw that into the workouts. So I think, I program them at least 1, if not 2 days a week or some variation of the vertical pull, but that doesn't mean that you just can't throw them in there. Same thing with more push-ups, which is the next one. Just periodically, if you're sitting around, and I do this all the time, like I jump on the assault bike and I'll do 20 minutes, and then I hook up that, we've been testing that max oxygen machine. And so I'll kind of step away, try to do like 100 push-ups in as little sets as possible. I'll do like a set of like 50, 25, and 25. And then I jump back on and I'll do it for like, 7 to 10 minutes. If I'm working outside, I'm not going to do it today. It's 104 degrees out. But periodically, I'll just challenge the kids if they're out there, how many push-ups can you do? And we'll just do, push-up contest. And when we were at the lake with Thad's boys, same thing. Like if there's any little boys around, I'll be like, how many push-ups you got? I got $5 in my pocket, or I got $1 for every push-up, every 10 push-ups you can get. And I'll just challenge them to it. And then they'll be like, Mr. Wellborn, how many can you get? And I'm like, I think I'll get 50. How many can I get with you on your back? All right, you can sit on my back and see how many I get. So I think there's some games to be played, especially with your kids, but within yourself to constantly challenge. And what's amazing about push-ups and pull-ups, the only way you get good at them is by practicing them and doing them often.
Yeah. And with that being said, the people that have the mindset of, I'm not good at pull-ups. I've never been good at pull-ups.
You will never be good at them. Yeah. I lie to myself about that. I'm the best that there ever was at pull-ups. I can do as many as I want. And I think that positive affirmation within yourself, to go back and quote Mushiashi, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but do not speak ill about yourself, or the warrior within will start to believe. And I want to say I totally butchered the quote. It's different, but like it's real true. Like,
yeah,
if you're negatively attacking yourself all the time, at some point you start to believe. And so I don't need you to be delusional like some of the people that have worked for us.
Well, the point with pull-ups, it pairs with the standard. And going back to our old seminar, what's our standard for pull-ups? It's not eyes to bar, chest to bar, chin over bar. It's pull up. So even if you have 0 pull-ups as your standard, even your effort to go up there, grab the bar, wrap your thumbs around and pull, that's still 1. And then you're going to get closer and closer until we have, yes, what we can count as 1 rep. But we need that effort and need you to try. And then eventually you're going to get closer to that bar.
Yep. So, yeah, more push-ups, more pull-ups. And then the next one's going to be trunk. I might not be as trunk heavy in Grindstone as I am in Jack Street, some of the other programs, just because I'm constantly searching on economy of time. I don't need you burning 45 minutes in a warm up and then hitting because there is a ton of volume, because I know these are 2 big training days. So that doesn't mean you can't get extra. We have a ton of stuff, especially if you click on Johnny Bob, there's going to be some form of trunk almost every single day. But really being able to focus on isometric contractions, being able to maintain posture and position as you move your legs independently, like on the dead bug, doing some side pillars with some reaches where now we're reaching under a transverse plane, thinking about the med balls in terms of rotation, throws, transverse, really understanding those loading and those principles, and really just being real trunk heavy. So if you need extra, you can always do extra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or commercial times during football season.
Yeah.
Hey, just get down on those dead buggers and push your kids around.
I do. I challenge my daughter to dead bugs all the time. They're so good at it. Like, they're so good from gymnastics. They're like, Dad, is this hard? I'm like, for most of the population, it is.
Big time.
And I tell them all the time, I hope it never gets hard for you. I hope everything stays easy. Like watching them sit in the bottom of a squat, like Jamie can perch like a vulture on the back of the couch and can just hang out there in a squatted position, standing on basically the balls of her feet elevated, like active foot, sit in a squatted position and watch TV like that and stay like that for 20 or 30 minutes.
Gargoyle statue.
It's unbelievable, not only the level of flexibility, but the ability to control that position in the bottom. And Kate's like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm so jealous I can't do that. And I don't know. I mean, but that's part of the kid stuff, man. I watch them sit on their sit on their knees and sit back, and they can sit in that position forever. And I'm like, God, I cry. My knees would ache within seconds of doing that.
Yeah.
So more push-ups, more pull-ups, more trunk. And then the last one is sleep. We talked about it for all the programs. We got a ton of stuff with Doc Parsley. I was 100% wrong about sleep in my 20s. I had this whole notion I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I burned the candle at both ends. And all of a sudden, when I didn't need, I felt like I could, sleep a couple hours, get up and be at my best. I didn't realize the performance gain of sleep until I really needed it. And all of a sudden in my 30s, what I did in my 20s didn't work. And I really got into understanding that I had to effectively defend and protect my sleep and how valuable it is. And now that I'm in my 40s, I really realize it is after, reading Dr. Matt's book, and then also, talking to Parsley and all the stuff we've done with him, understanding the effects in terms of neurological, the neurological effect, but also neuroplasticity and health, and just, starving off Alzheimer's and this neurological aging that's coming. Sleep is our best defense. So for those of you guys on Grindstone, I want you to safeguard your sleep. I want you to do whatever you can to maximize your sleep. And if you're poorly sleeping, go out, get a sleep study done, figure out if you need a CPAP, maybe a mouth guard or whatever it is. But I need you to effectively maximize your sleep. And you know what? If it requires a new bed, a chili pad, or whatever it requires to allow you to sleep at your best, do it. You think we're going to spend roughly a third of our lives in bed. So, think about people spend a hell of a lot more in a car than they do on a bed, but you'll actually spend more time in that bed than you will ever in that car. So if you're going to spend some money, throw some dough at getting a nice bed. Mm-hmm. And actually the options for beds are so much better now. Some of the memory foam beds that showed up in a box that we got for our guest room are super comfortable. So the days of going and buying some big box spring, and although those are kind of over, the technology piece is there in terms of really finding some amazing beds.
Real cheap.
Yeah.
I like this sleep paired with training day selection, because then it puts your attention and focus on what days am I getting the most sleep. That puts me in the best position to hammer those mandatory days.
Something I've been doing recently, I started sleeping with all my curtains open. The blinds.
What are you, nuts?
So it's pretty cool because now when you lay there, all of a sudden, when the sun comes up, I get up. So before I would sleep with the shades down, Rob, make the room as dark. I remember Rob Wolf telling me to make the room dark as possible. And then the problem was I would, have to wake up with an alarm, which always felt like I was jarred out of sleep. So now what's cool is now that I sleep with the shades up, all of a sudden when I see the light come up and it gets me up, it's I'll crack it anywhere from 6:15 to 6:20 pretty consistently when it comes up. and I actually really enjoy it.
I'm up before the sun.
I get up.
Hammering away.
Well, I don't have to travel as far as you do to go to the gym.
Also true.
So, I mean, I can get up.
Not that I have to travel far.
Not that my commute is shorter than yours.
Correct.
And, I mean, it's like a 30-second walk.
Yeah,
maybe
10-minute drive, more or less.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, our UK buddy, it's about lunchtime for him when we're waking up, so we're hammered.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. On the weekends, on Saturdays, I'll get up extra early, and I don't know why. Like on the weekdays, it could be anywhere from 5:45 to 6:15. But what was wild was that when it was in the winter, when the sun was coming up later, but now that it's summer, I'll start getting up dramatically. But it's nice to wake up with the sun. That goes back to what was it, my 42 things. It's better to live like a farmer than it is to live like a bartender.
That's for sure.
Farmers get up when the sun comes up, when the rooster crows.
Yeah, what I have started doing is taking the focus calm, getting the meditation just on the porch with the 6 a.m. sunrise.
So what's something that's
nice.
bullshit? They always talked about when the rooster crows. You always hear it in like the country songs. They're like, wake up when the rooster crows. That's not true. The roosters crow all the time, all the day, all night. Like the one time I don't hear them is around 6 a.m. when the sun comes up. I hear those damn things like the rooster, that's got to be like one of those like country myths. Like, I get up when the rooster crows. I'm like, dude, that thing crows all the time.
Well, yeah, it's all those Nashville writers that are not country. They just sound like Hicks.
I love listening to a country song where all of a sudden you're like ticking the boxes. You're like, oh, they mentioned a dirt road. They mentioned beer. They mentioned, it's just like they have like a checklist on a wall and they're like, okay, these are country things.
Well, these are formulas constructed by the record companies to get out these people on the radio. It's all bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
You want real country, listen to Texas country artists. I'll direct our listeners a good way. I want you to follow Corey Morrow. He's actually pals with Pat Green. So Pat Green, he went up, this is Texas terms, going Nashville. That's essentially selling out. So Pat Green, he went Nashville. And Corey Morrow's got a song. It's called Nashville Blues that tells this whole story.
What's his name?
Corey Morrow. He's from Houston. By far my favorite Texas artist.
The guy who I've kind of, and I know he's kind of gone a little bit mainstream, is Morgan Wallen.
Don't know who that is.
He's got that song called Sand in My Boots. He gets a little bit of radio play, but he's actually pretty big. But I'll tell you, the guy who I'm dying to see is Ray Willie Hubbard.
Ray Wiley Hubbard.
Oh, sorry. Is it Wiley? Yeah, Ray Wiley Hubbard.
Yeah.
He plays all around here. And I've been trying to go see him because he's kind of old, but he's got some good songs.
Yeah.
Screw You Were from Texas, and that other song about the devil, which he gives the best line when he has a dream that he basically goes to hell, and the devil asks him, he's like, I've been good. And he's like, what about all that whiskey and cocaine? And he's like, well, I never did the cocaine to get high. I just like the way it smelled. I mean, he had some great one-liners in there, and I've always wanted to see him. But the
key is singer-songwriter. So you're singing the songs that you wrote.
So you're saying like Kenny Chesney and what's that other guy that you really love? Luke Bryant, where you went to his concert and threw your underwear on stage? That was Luke Bryant, right?
I don't know what to say to that. Probably one of my favorite memes of all time is when the mega Powerball was so big, like $500 million jackpot. There was a meme going around where a guy buys every single Luke Bryan ticket to a stadium concert, and he's the only person in there just yelling at Luke Bryan how much he sucks.
Yeah, I'm not a Luke Bryan fan.
No,
and I'm not a Kenny Chesney fan. What's the other guy? Blake
Shelton.
Yeah, not a fan of his either.
Well, he's real funny. I appreciate his sense of humor. That's about it.
Really? What on The Voice?
Yeah.
I think you got Willie Nelson. You got George Strait. I mean, George Strait. Like, there's never a time when a George Strait song comes on the radio.
So and he's a great singer.
They do, but he's not a songwriter. He's never written any of his own music.
Check the notes. He takes a lot from the Texas artists.
Okay. But I mean, when was the last time, if you're driving and you hear a George Strait song come on, like I'd never change the channel.
Well, I went from a 86 truck with no radio to a 78 Benz with probably the worst reception of all time, John. It's not happening.
Well, there's no way to wire in your like Spotify or anything.
Well, I've taken the Derek Woodsky approach of I'm just going to drive and think. So no podcasts. I thought now they're, I'm listening too much to other people's thoughts versus ruminating on what I have to say, John.
I like listening to music. So
there's nothing wrong with that either.
And then the other thing is the minute that the kids get in the car, I feel that I have to expose them to as much music that they would not be exposed to. So like basically anything that's Metallica, Led Zeppelin, any type of 80s rock, anything.
That's great because I get some high school athletes and then at games they play Led Zeppelin and other like classic rock.
This stuff's terrible.
Exactly. So showing them the way with music, they're going to get a lot farther faster.
So over Memorial Day, my brother, they went to Catalina.
With the wine mixer?
No, Catalina's an island off of the coast off LA.
Step Brothers.
I don't know. So they took their boat over, and they have friends with boats, and they're at the English Beat. They had like an 80s concert over there. So my brother went and took my niece and nephew, and they had a great time. And they ended up running into Richard Blade, who I don't know if you know who Richard Blade is. He was a guy on like K-Rock. Like when we were kids, Richard Blade, he's like an English dude who was always the DJ. So they run into Richard Blade. So my brother sends me a picture with like Al and her friend and Richard Blade, and then sent me a clip because Richard Blade has a show on Sirius, I think, where like he's like, oh, I met this great family, and totally like wishes Al a happy birthday, which was pretty cool. But Al's big into 80s music.
Good for her.
Yeah. So he was like, he even said, he's like, it's pretty rare to come across kids that are big into this 80s music, and hopefully my kids are.
Well, wrapping this up, John, these are some excellent tips for music and getting the most
if you're
out of
interested,
Grindstone.
Power Athlete has a Spotify channel. And if you want to tag in on my own personal Spotify channel, it's real easy to find. All you got to look for is Talk to Me, Johnny, is what my playlist and what my profile, and it's public. So you can click on, you can see what I'm listening to. And more importantly, some of my playlists, but I've also designed a ton of the playlists that are on Power Athlete. So if you search Power Athlete, you'll see our Spotify. We got a playlist. And
for each guest,
and I'll just periodically put them in. And so, I mean, if you're into, a bunch of heavy metal stuff and maybe some country music, I do have a little bit of house and a little bit of trance, a little bit of Tiesto and some of the stuff like in there. As I find myself quite often, if there's nothing good on the radio, I just listen to like either house or trance music and BPM. Some of the
rave music. Yeah.
Texas is like, is this music from a rave? I'm like, how do you know? You've never been to a rave. I saw one on TV.
Blade.
Yeah, the Blood Rave.
All right. Well, to get a 7-day free trial of Grindstone, head to powerathletehq.com/grindstone, and then to hear John's vampire rave story, stay tuned to Power Athlete Radio and the episodes to come.
Or
subscribe.
Hit subscribe, or you can call in on our hotline at 929-464-464. 929-ING-ING. And ask to hear stories about the vampires. Or send text a picture. He likes them.
Do that.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.